All right. So let's talk a little bit about a couple of things in here. Okay. So I want to talk about, and there's one right here that's super important, is we talk about double bottoms. Okay. Now, those are when support levels hold twice. Okay. We'll talk about double tops as well. We'll see if we can identify one. But something that's super important here is that you can see this actually turns out to be triple bottom, but you can see there's multiple bounces off this. And you want to be a little bit more specific. We can see that there's 1 and 2 really big bounces off this support line, right? So when you see double, that means we talk about it hitting twice. Now, this was a little bit below. This was a little bit above it, and then it hit it again here, right? So we have it once, twice, right? So hits this bottom, pushes up above everything, right? Hits a resistance level, rejects. This actually pushed back to the 238 again, hit this same support level, right? As you can see, same support level. So we have, right? So we have 1. Actually, it looks like a 2. So we have 1, right? Right. And then we have 2. So you have 1 bottom, 2 bottom, and then this does this. Okay. So that means that, and you can see that this has tested this a few other times. And if you had these not just lines and you had these as areas, this would come up as a big area, right? In a double bottom test. So this signal right here, albeit that this candle here I don't like very much, and the signal came right on the 238, but if you waited for the pullback and the confirmation of this to go on that signal, right, because it was right on that 238, right? So it hits once, right? It then hits twice. Okay. Then the one thing about these double bottoms is that it has to come up and break our resistance level, okay, for confirmation. And it does all of that right here. Okay. So you get your first bounce off it, 1. Okay. We're just going to call this the full bounce. This didn't quite go to the bottom, but you get your second full bounce off it, which is 2, right up to this rejection area. Okay. And then once it breaks this rejection area, you can see that a whole bunch of confirmation happens right here, right? Like, talk about all the confirmations that happen in this little area. Okay. First, you get the signal, right? The signal's right on the 238. So we want to be patient, right? Because the 238 is a pretty good chance that it's going to reject, as it's already done it once and twice, right? You got your 238, and just remember this is on trend, right? In the 15, we would have checked the 15. 15 is in an uptrend, right? It's on trend. Okay. Sorry, it's over here, right? This is on trend to head up. Okay. Right. So you get your first bounce, you get your second bounce. Okay. And then you can see there's a resistance level, which happens to be right at the 238. So there's multiple confirmations that happens right here. Okay. Let's list them all out. Okay. Multiple confirmations. Okay. Okay. Multiple confirmations. First one is, slide this over to the side so I can see, right? The first one is we have a signal. Okay. Now, right, the signal is at the 238, so we need to be patient with it, right? Then we get this 1 candle rejection immediately right back up. We could still enter at the break of this 238, right? The first one is the signal. Our second confirmation is pullback and engulfing candle. Now, this is going to be a little bit more advanced for some people who are brand new, but engulfing candle essentially means that a candle that completely covers the candle to the left of it, right? So we're looking for this uptrend because our long-term trend is up, right? We get this pullback. That's this candle. Just remember, we're going to go over pullback entries and engulfing candles. We're going to go over them much more in this chart. And understanding how to enter in these, when you're not right on a signal. But this 238, right, hits this 238, bounces, you get a little pullback off that 238, and it immediately comes up, not only engulfs this candle, which means that the body of this candle is bigger than the body of that candle, but it also breaks the 238, and the 238 was right on that resistance level, right? And then the last confirmation after you get into this trade, I mean, it happens way up here, but I mean, by that time, 724 to 770, there's 50 pips in there. That's actually over your goal for the day. If you take that 50 pip trade, you're essentially done. Okay. But there's one last confirmation in here. We call this thing, and we'll go over these things more. Just remember, we're still kind of in the basics of this, and we're talking about, sorry, there's a confirmation that I missed in here. That was the most important one, and that's what we're focusing on here. Literally talking about double bottom. So that's the first thing I see. I'm like, okay, here's a double bottom, right? And we'll talk about all these pieces after we get them up here. Breaks the 238 and resistance area. And the last one is what you guys are going to learn here in the next couple of weeks, what we call a sleeper trade, which is like the last confirmation if you're trying to hold a trade. We're going to go over all these pieces here, okay? So here's all your confirmations, okay? First, you have your double bottom, right? We got one bottom here, right? We have one bottom here, right? Two bottoms there. That's our first confirmation. Check mark beside that. I could probably just go and hit a check mark, but that's our first one. Woo! Right? That's our first confirmation. Double bottom. 1, 2. Okay. Right. There we go. That's all we're going to do. Exactly. Let's just get a little check mark on here. Make it look a little nicer. It is. Okay. It's red. I don't like that color very much because we're looking for good confirmations. Make it a little smaller. Okay, so first one, double bottom, right? We got 1 and 2. Okay. The next one is our signal, right? Which is, this is going to be a pain in the butt doing this over and over again. Okay. The next one is our signal, which is right. Our signal right there, right here in this circle. There's our signal to indicate that our trend is shifting. Okay. We have a pullback, which is this red candle. And then the next candle engulfs and it breaks the 238. So both of these confirmations, okay, it should be an easier way to do that. But both of these confirmation happen next, right? Okay, and then the last one is, and you guys are all going to learn what this is later on, is what we call super, which means that these EMAs, the red EMA and the blue EMA, both cross the 238. Okay, right here. That indicates a super trade. Okay. So multiple confirmations. 1, 2, double bottom, right? Signal. We get a little pullback off the 238, and then the candle engulfs. It breaks the 238, runs up, and then at this point is where we can decide. I mean, this would have been your first goal once we get all this off the chart. This level here would have been your first goal, right? I mean, it's past your first goal. We should be doing 30 to 50 pips, right? Depending on lot size and those types of things. But this is a 45 pip trade, depending on when you entered it. Your stop could be 20 pips, right? The engulfing candle. Yep. And you might just be a little bit late, and if you got into it there, right? This gives you the opportunity once you see this super trade present itself. Okay. And once you see this super trade present itself, I'm just keeping you guys here so you guys can see that where this potentially actually goes, right? You could take that to 50 or the 60 level, but the super trade is essentially when both the EMAs, the red and the blue, cross the 238, and we'll go over that more. Okay. And that actually happens right here in this pullback. Okay. Okay. Yeah, because I was waiting for this double bottom. Right, look at where that calls it, right at this resistance level. The big red star there as well, right? Red star right at this resistance level, and it immediately pulls back because the signal came right around the 238. Okay. Multiple confirmations, and if you manage to go to break even, stretch your TP, you know, there's potential 80 to 90 pips in that move. Okay. And we're going to go over pieces of that. But the first one, what I wanted to show you was this double bottom. 1, 2. It's a pattern that I pay attention to, right? Because it comes back down to this support area. On trend is back up. I'm like, okay, it's hit this support level twice. This support level wants to hold. And now I'm going to wait to join that uptrend. Okay. So that's double bottom, right? 1, 2. Actually had, that you could call that 3 if you wanted to, but if you look on a 5, it's a little bit bigger. Okay. And I'm going to clear this chart off. And we're going to look for double top. Okay. So just bear with me. I'm going to have to.
I'm so proud of you.
What's that?
I'm so proud of you.
Thanks, buddy. I can't use the little garbage can because it'll take the.
No, if you press those little 2 arrows on your far right, you'll see like a stack of sheets kind of symbol.
This one?
Yeah. And there, that's don't go down. That's don't down there. Yeah. Hit that. It'll open up there. And then you can just X all those brushes.
Oh, nice. It's essentially what I'm doing with that back button as well. But and then you can feel the text. Stack of sheets. Love it.
Get your thing back, you scroll all the way up.
Yep.
It'll be top one.
Okay. We're not going to talk about super trade right now. We're going to talk about double bottoms and double tops. Super trade will be something that's a little bit further on. Okay. Let's try and find ourselves a little double top here. And rejection. Okay, let's see if we can find one here in the 1. Maybe we can find one in a little bit longer term chart. So this one is a little bit of a breakout. But this does turn into a nice sell on the. Yesterday. I just don't see that. Yeah, no, it's hard to see on this side because we've been in the uptrend, so I'm gonna have to find a place where we're actually into a. Okay, so this one actually has multiple tops as well, but you can see in this, right? We have a resistance area. There's another. There's another piece, so you can see that there's a resistance level here, right? You can see all these levels are hitting. So this becomes more than one, but at least the first part for me is that there's a double top. And even if I got into this, it's only a few pips. That would have been close to my stop loss, but not quite. Knowing that there's a double top here, we can just talk a little bit about this, right? So the trend was in a different direction. Okay, so we just want to look at this, right? This came down, right? Started this, hit this support line, bounced, This has already set out that resistance level. You can see it's here as well, right? So this turns into a fairly strong, very strong resistance level, pushes back up, actually goes once, comes back down twice, and then you get 3 times, right? So even entering at this signal, although the signal would look a bit iffy in this move, right? This does eventually head down this direction, okay?
Just point out though, right? Even that says that's iffy. That's what we're talking about, trusting your trade, making sure you're setting that stop loss at a support or structure level. And it's those ones where they try to get you out, but KILLSHOT's keeping you in, so you make that big money.
Yeah, well, you put your stop loss up here, right? Because if it breaks that this could be your next stop. We'll go over that once we get into here. But you have multiple rejections, right? So you have, this is your first resistance. You actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, but we're just going to kind of go over it. The first thing I always see is the double, right? So I'm like, it's already hit it twice, potential for this rejection, right? So comes, this just sets that out, pushes down here, hits it once, hits it twice. Okay, so we're going to get our little 1 here, right? And then we get our 2 here, right? And now the signal comes. So for me, I probably would have entered this signal. Okay. Well, it eventually turns into a super trade, and you can wait in this trade and wait for that double top, triple top to form and wait for the break of that 238. Right? You could do that, Sam, right? That's no problem. You could wait this one out and actually enter it at the break, and we'll show that entry as well, because that entry is not very far. That's only a 10 pip shift entry, right? But 1, 2 signal comes, right? You want to enter at that signal, even if you do enter that single signal, and we talk about trust our trade. So you have 1, 2, and then we'll talk about those confirmations as well, right? You have your signal, chart breaks below this 238. We also have a super trade that presents itself over here, right? Bounces, hits this second top. What does this candle do? Anybody who was paying attention to the last one, what does the body of this candle do? It engulfs, right? So you have that push back up, bounces, body of this candle engulfs, bounces here, you get that signal. I would have entered at this signal. Now, this would have been a bit of a, I mean, it's only 6, 7 pips, actually. It looks like a lot more when we're in here this close. But these are your multiple confirmations, right? 1, 2, you have an engulfing candle, you have a signal. This 238 is in the way. Now, that's one piece that might have kept you out of this trade, like Sam just talked about. Okay, but if you did get into this thing, knowing that 1, 2, and it does reject again, we can take a look at the short position. Right, our stop loss, even just back to here, is only 20 pips. Right, stretch this thing out, and we got 50 on the board. Okay, now the one thing that's in here is that 238 can be a rejection area, which we just saw in the last trade, right? The 238 holds some strength, and you can see it does bounce off here and it flashes through and comes back up, stays below that 50, right? As it goes. So if you wanted to wait this signal out and see 1, 2, 3 tops, right? So you had your third top, you wanted to wait this thing to break that 238. This is still, right? Just missed that 50 pips, but this is still a 49 to 50% trade. Yeah, that was just a multiple confirmation on that buy. So if you waited for this confirmation, which Sam just said, right, it's actually that same confirmation, Marcos. Like you have 1, 2, 3, and then you have this support area, which you can see that line, which guess what? It does again, right? It lines right up with this 238. Right? So if you waited for that break of that 238, that would be breaking that support line, which is right on that 238. That's that other confirmation you were just asking about. Right? And then she breaks and runs. And guess what happens right after? Let's forget, you got to switch that thing back. Okay. And then guess what happens right after you enter at that 238? Has a push, a little retest back to the 50. And then what do these EMAs do? right? That's also another confirmation. So you have the exact same confirmation you did on the last trade. You had one top, two tops. You actually had three come here, but you had one, two, an engulfing candle and a signal. So this signal wouldn't have been the worst to enter, but that 238 is a bit in the way. So if you waited for all these confirmations to play out, so you're going to be one, two, and then you had three bottoms, you had your signal in here, right? So you had your one, two tops, you had your signal, you then had a third top, then it broke the support and the 238, and then you also had the super trade as the last confirmation. I don't have a mouse, and I want a Mac, so bit of a pain. All those confirmations, right? Well, I mean, this is it only goes 5 or 6 pips down here before it retests. After you see these two EMAs break this 238, I probably would go to BE right at this support level. Once it bounced and tested that 50 and came back and broke this support line, this is when I'd go to BE. Okay. The 238 is just a safety area. So one thing about the 238 is that, and we'll go over these more next week when we get to EMAs, but the 238 is a safety area. It's a rejection zone, right? It's essentially the 50, right? It's the 50, the blue EMA. It's the 50 on the 5. Okay, so it's just an extra confirmation. If you didn't take the signal, you want to be below it, would be a better sell. Yes, if you're above it and you get a buy, it's better because it can be one of those things that rejects on the way. Okay, Jesse. And then James says, if you didn't take the signal, where would you enter if you were waiting for the 238 to break? I would enter at the 238 break. I would enter right there, right where I have this set up. Right where I have that. That's exactly where I would enter. Bounce it around there, broke the 238. That's where I would enter. My stop loss can even get even tighter. Be back to that support area. Nice little 1 to 3 risk to reward. Okay. These are those confirmations. Now, of course, we want to no time distance. No, George, you just want to see those levels when they come back to those levels. And, sometimes it can take longer, right? But these double tops and double bottoms are usually indications, are a very high indication that they want to reverse because they've tested it twice now, right? Once, twice, there's 3 times up here. They're like, okay, right? You're like, okay, it's tried to break up 1, 2, 3 times. It has rejected it 3 times. This thing is a pretty good chance that it goes this other direction. Okay. I don't always. Nope. Do you always wait for a pullback and engulfing candle? Or do you enter at the break of the 238 regardless? No, I would take the signal. The 238 would have been a bit iffy for me, but I would take the signal. No, I don't want to look at ones we wouldn't enter right now. I'm looking at confirmations on ones we would enter. But you can see most of these bottoms look back to back, right? With this trade, I wouldn't have entered. There would have been a big red star right here and the 238. I mean, it did flash through here and there was a few pips you could have protected yourself at a break even, but I wouldn't have liked this one because of it's right at that resistance level. But that's why I showed you the next one. Okay, does that all make sense? These multiple confirmations. Okay. Multiple confirmations, right? 1, 2, okay, you're like, all right. And I usually see these. So when you start to get super, super comfortable with the indicator, you're going to see these setups beforehand, right? You're going to see these setups before they happen. You're going to be like, okay, I'm looking for this to get back on trend, right? You say we're in a downtrend, right? I'm looking for that signal, that down signal, right? I see a a double top, I'm like, okay, double top, this thing does want to reverse. No, Angel. Okay, so everybody here needs to understand how the boot camp's going to work. And I'm just going to be a little bit more specific here. Every week is going to be another piece of learning. I'm not going to go through, we have a progression we're going to make through, because talking about engulfing candles when there's lots of people here who are brand new is not in the best direction. When we get to that week where we're going to talk about those, that's when we'll talk about more engulfing candles. Okay. So I just want to make sure we're focused and everybody's getting the clear direction and clear information they're looking for before we start adding more to it. Okay. So we have, these are the things once you start to use this thing, right? Everyone, when you start to use this thing, you're going to see these ahead of time, right? Just like over here, double bottom. You're like, okay, pushed up here. Maybe I did take this one and took a loss, right? Because that happens, right? Maybe I did take this one and was like, man, caught me here on this next candle. Actually wouldn't have got you till here, but even that, I mean, actually, if you were using your 1 to 2 risk reward over here, oops, even on this buy signal that did reject, and you're using a 25 pip stop, she would have been very close.
Well, our veterans would have already been in that trade, made a ton of money on that displacement trade. They would have been getting out right when that got called, and then they would have waited for pullback, and then they would have made a shit ton on the next call.
Let's take it easy over there.
That's what you guys will look like at the end of boot camp.
Yeah. So, which we would have got a little bit here, but Bryce is, Bryce. So, yeah. And so we want to make sure that we're trusting the signals. It's super important. Sometimes we're going to take losses. These signals are not perfect. No indicator on this planet has perfect signals. We're going to take some losses along the way. Okay. But if we're waiting for multiple confirmations to be like, okay, 1, 2, 3 tops, this has to reject slightly. It breaks that 238. I'm good to go. Trust my trade, break that 238, 1 to 2, even just, you had a 20 pip stop, say your 25 pip stop, you just missed your 1 to 2 right there. But this would be a pretty easy trade to get to break even and let run. Okay. Cool. We are going to kill this recording now as we talk about double tops and double bottoms. And yes and no, Brian, I was just using that as an example. Of course, we want to make sure our trend is on that direction, so we want to make sure that we were in a 15 downtrend. I don't always enter a signal, no, but 80% of the time I'm entering a signal, 80 to 90. It just depends where that signal comes, right? There could be a whole bunch of things in the way, right? Like this would have been a tough signal to enter, right? We already had a buy that got rejected, came back down, and then it hit this 238 and was bouncing around here. It would have been tough to enter at that signal. Literally hit the 238, next candle right back down. You still would have been fine though, right? You just would have had to have, and I'll show you here. Okay. You still would have been fine in this trade, even if you entered at the signal, right? Your 25 pips is actually back down here into the support area. 50 to go, right? There's your 1 to 2. Even entering at that signal rated that 238. I would have been patient to make sure that 238 wasn't a rejection. Still would have got it in the same position, but I wouldn't have had a bunch of drawdown. It would have just went right up here into profit. It's just a better entry. Little sniper entry right there. Okay, cool. I am going to stop recording. And we'll move on to setting up these charts for the rest of the day. All right.